You're listening to One Bright Star's Life After Loss, a podcast that's focused on the lifelong journey of life after loss, with your hosts Erica Fisher and Alicia Moore. One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast is sponsored by the law firm of Burkholz and Associates. And now, One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast.
Hello and welcome to One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast. I'm Erica Fisher, Executive Director of One Bright Star.
And Alicia Moore, President of One Bright Star.
And today we brought back one of our favorites, Lynn. Hello, Lynn.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, and you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
It's spring.
Yes.
Is it, though?
Well,
I have my winter jacket on.
It doesn't feel like it, but...
time-wise, it's spring.
Yes.
It's coming. It's happening.
I just keep on telling myself, April showers bring me flowers.
And we're going to have so many beautiful flowers. So many.
Sounds good.
I hope so. I'm just ready. I need some sunshine in my life.
Same.
So, Lynn, we have touched base a few times since the last time we've met. We talked a lot about teen grief. Mm-hmm. And you brought this up to me because your daughters have recently, we're coming up on 2 years.
Yep.
A loss. They lost their father.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't a lot of, in Mankato anyways, we haven't found a lot of options that are support teen grief or what they need.
There really isn't a lot out there. You have the adult support groups that people can drive themselves to, and then, once you fit in, we have One Bright Star, which deals with children, and there are activities and things, and hospice I know does activities. The hospital does activities with kids who have experienced, but there's really not a whole lot for those in-betweens. And my girls lost their dad unexpectedly, went to bed and just never woke up. And so the world shut down on, I believe, March 13th is when everything kind of shut down and everything happened. Mm-hmm. And then April 26th will be the 2-year anniversary. Okay. So it was at such a weird time. It was drive-in funerals, and it was so weird. And then there was no school and there was no normal to get back to. So that was interesting to navigate and try to figure out how that was going to work. Now things are kind of back to normal. So the super great thing about kids is that their attention span is pretty short. So the girls went back to school not really being the kids whose dad just died. Where in a normal world, that would have happened. They would have been out for a few weeks, probably,
yes,
gone back to school, and they would have been the kids whose dad just died. Where there really wasn't a lot of that. They were doing online school at the time, and it was when teachers really didn't know what was happening and what was going on, and students had just as much as ideas that the teachers did. So they were super great and fortunate enough to kind of pop in when you want to, but the rest of the year is kind of, it's not really a thing. So that was great. My oldest was in college at the time, and she used college as an escape.
Okay.
A way to, to get out of it. But same thing, it was all online. So she was home, but even though, she had school to focus on, and then she was working with kids, and that kind of fell apart. So she was literally at home the whole time. So I think her life probably was more turned upside down than anyone else's at that point, because she had been able to go to class online and do things, and then there was nothing. So,
wow.
Yeah, so there was that. So
that's a lot.
Well, and so when we talk about how when someone we love dies, your world stops. So everyone can remember where they were, what happened. It's like a 9/11 event, or, where were you when JFK was shot?
Right.
Everybody remembers exactly what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
This was that times 10, because everyone's world stopped, not just theirs. So everyone's going through their own stuff and their own things, but there's nothing to get back to. So where a lot of people have, they run back to their normal, or some people will just kind of hide and retreat. There was nothing to run and get back to.
Or even hide to because you were stuck at home with everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there was no normal.
No
There was
normal.
No normal at all.
So you're feeling all of your feelings all of the time.
Yes. All of the
Oof.
time.
All of the time.
That's really, How old were the girls? You said your oldest was in college.
Yep. So she was 19.
Okay.
And so it was 19, 17, and 15.
Oh, tough.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. If you could pick a super crummy age, that would be it.
Yes.
All of them.
Yeah. I would never want to go back to that age.
No, not ever want to.
Right.
No. And I will say, watching them, so super fortunate in the fact that their dad and I have been remarried, and they have 4 sets of grandparents
Okay.
and 4 families really to love on them.
That's great.
So they spent probably, I would say, the first month, most of the summer maybe, with their dad's side of the family, which was super great because they were all going through the same thing. And they were all able to be together and grieve together, which is something in a normal world would not have happened. So that was really good. Sometimes, though, they just needed to get away from it and take a break and come back.
Yes.
So that was my house, because my house was somewhat normal. The other saving grace was that since I was laid off, I was watching a baby.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
And I will tell you, nothing makes you happier than watching a baby.
Yes.
So Grace, my youngest, became very attached
Oh.
to this little baby. And still to this day, when she's feeling down, she's like, we need to go see baby.
Oh, that's sweet. Yes.
And she's, she's 2.5.
Right. Okay.
But just, that was the super great thing where it literally has to take your mind off of it because she's a baby and she needs everything from you.
Right.
Your undivided attention. She can't feed herself or, do anything. So, yeah. So that was the saving grace that we had for Grace.
For Grace. Yes. So that's really sweet. Yes. A great distraction. That's what she needed to get through. And
Yep.
now I love that she's formed that bond. And then she says, let's go see baby. And she'll always have that connection.
Oh, yeah.
That's really sweet.
And they have 2 younger brothers. Their dad and his wife had 2 little boys.
Okay.
So there was always comedy. Comedy always ensues wherever they go because I think they were they 5 and 3? So very innocent and very, they knew that dad left, but they didn't understand.
It's a lot for
Yes.
little kids to
It is a lot.
Concept, yeah.
One of my nieces, when her grandpa died, he's in the coffin. And how do you explain? I thought you said grandpa left. Why is
Why
he
is he
here?
still here?
So the explanation was given that he is in a spaceship, and then when we're done with the service, it's going to go to the moon. And then, so whenever we look up at the stars, then we'll see grandpa.
Okay.
And I tell you what, it worked. And if anyone wants to borrow that, you are more than welcome to.
That's great.
Because then when they look up at the stars, she thinks of grandpa.
That's really cool.
Absolutely. Yes.
It sounds
That
crazy
is.
to all of us
No.
adults. But if you want to simplify something into a way that it's an answer,
Yes.
all little kids want is an answer. So death may seem like a super hard conversation to have with younger people, but they just want an answer.
Right. And that made a lot of sense that they're going to go off into space. And when you look up, because we always talk about looking up and seeing our loved ones and in the stars and that
Yep.
stuff, that's really cool.
Well,
I like
there's the
that.
song "Holes in the Floor of Heaven." You
Right.
want
Okay.
You want a tearjerker in the car on the
Nope,
way
nope.
home. That's
Okay.
a good one.
We've been
Okay.
talking about singing, but I don't know if I can do that one. Well, and that kind of goes back to compassionate communities that
Yes.
we're involved in, Lynn, and how we talk about how death doesn't have to be a taboo thing. And maybe that's where we start as the younger generation. It is a part of life. And I talk to my kids about, like, when my 12-year-old asked me about, like, somebody, I have to go to a friend's funeral. Your friend's dad died? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, how? And I'm like, circle of life, bud, and it just, and I said, this is a time that we remember and honor and, and just, it's okay to laugh and okay to cry and it's okay to feel all of the things.
Yep.
And, because he's a very sensitive kid, he has a sensitive heart. But yeah, it goes back to that. I mean, maybe that's where we're missing the part, is where we need to start with the younger generation so they know how to grieve and kind of understand. Obviously, we're not going to get into full detail, to little kids, but,
Right.
Somewhat. Really.
An answer, and to not ignore it. We
Right.
need to talk about it.
You have to. I mean,
Yes.
middle schoolers are feeling all the feelings anyway, thanks to puberty.
Mm-hmm.
So they might have emotions that are happening that they don't understand. I remember when I watched E.T. for the first time with Rachel, and she's crying and she's sitting at the, watching, and she goes, I don't understand why I'm crying. I should be happy because he's going back home.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But why am I crying?
Because he's leaving Elliot.
Because
Right.
he's leaving Elliot. So that then is kind of a segue. So I know I should be happy, because they're going to heaven, but why am I sad?
Yes.
Because they're not here.
Right.
And
I'm-
that's okay.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
40 and I still don't understand all the things that I feel. So,
Right.
yeah.
It's and sometimes you hear things and someone is with you and just puts something in a completely different light. And
Yes.
it just puts everything into perspective. So as adults, a lot of times we look at the coulda, woulda, shouldas. Like, oh, if I would have done this, if I would have been there, if I would have done this. Where as kids, they don't have that because they don't have those responsibilities that us adults have. So the answers are so much more simplistic and they don't require a lot of thought. You just have to put it in their terms.
Right.
And understand that it's okay to have those conversations. They're not going to be mad or upset, or they might shed a couple of tears, but more than likely they're going to smile. So really, truly, no one wants to be forgotten.
Right.
So listening back on some podcasts and stuff, and this week, the number one thing is say their name.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Right.
that's all anybody wants, is just to say their name. Nothing makes my kids smile more than when I say, you get that from your dad, or your dad did that, or, it's just little things like that. Or, oh, this reminds me of the time that your dad did this.
That's neat.
See, and that's good
really
that you
neat.
talk about that. And they know it's a safe place and they can remember him with you.
Well, and we talk about death a lot at my house. It's one of those things. To compound the grief that they had, their dad's brother passed away. I think a year and a half after he did. So 6 months ago, maybe.
Okay. And he was young, obviously, too, and that was unexpected, I'm assuming? Or
He was young, not unexpected.
Okay.
So he had some life circumstances and some illnesses that led to, so they knew this was going to happen.
Okay.
He was brought home. They got to, hang out with him and say their goodbyes and things like
Okay.
that. So still traumatic because it's
Yes.
their dad's brother, but this was a little bit more expected. So what they didn't get with their dad, they did get with their uncle. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's still grief. There's
Yes.
not one that's
Right.
better than the other one. And I
It's
struggle
still
with that
grief,
a lot
yeah.
because people will say, well, at least you knew. Well, that doesn't make it any better.
They're still gone.
They're still gone.
And yes.
There are still things that happen. It doesn't matter
Yes.
if you're watching someone die or if they go to sleep and don't wake up.
Yes.
The loss is the same. At the end of the day, the loss
Right.
is the same.
Yes.
So they kind of got to relive everything again. However, this time they were able to take their cousins by the hand and say, let's do this together.
I bet that had to help them. Or do you think, as their mom, as the death educator and that stuff, how did you see them in that role?
I saw them step up a lot. I'm not with that side of the family. It's their dad's side of the family. However, having been part of their family for, 10, 12 years, and knowing how close the girl cousins are, because they were
Yes.
born every 9 months, I think, for how many years, and getting to see them, how connected they are on social media and everything else. It really was a group grief then.
Okay.
So not that you ever want to be part of that club or that
Right.
group,
But it's
but it's there.
Yeah.
And like it or not, unfortunately, losing your parents in high school is happening a lot more often than it ever did when I was in high school.
Yes.
So, I have 3 different, they're all girls and they're 25 months apart, but they're very, very different. So I have, the oldest one who just chooses to do the oldest child thing and take care of herself and kind of, whatever, you got this, and do about her life.
Mm-hmm.
My middle, I love her so much, and she has a heart the size of Texas, and she just wants to make sure that everybody is taken care of all the time. I felt super bad for her, but again, she took the torch and ran with it. She had 2 people reach out to her in one day at college and say, I found out from somebody that you lost your dad. I'm losing mine. What can you tell me? What do I need to know?
Oh, wow.
Imagine that text message at 19.
Oh, wow.
So she calls me crying and she says, what do I tell her? And I said, well, what would you have wanted to have been told?
Okay.
And she goes, I wouldn't want to tell anyone anything because I don't want it to happen. And I said, well, like it or not, this is the situation.
Yes.
And she's asking you for some guidance. So it could be to sit in your car and scream. It could be to go for a long drive. It could be if you're so upset and you shouldn't be driving, then it's okay to sit in your room and listen to your headphones and cry. Or why don't we go out for coffee and talk about your dad? Tell me what your favorite thing was. And then she had another friend who was suddenly in an accident, wasn't expected to make it through the night, and wasn't going to go see him.
Okay.
And she got really, really mad because she said, I wasn't given the choice.
Right.
You're given the choice and you're going.
Good for her.
And they went.
And they went.
So it's
good for your daughter, though, for
Yes.
pushing that, because her friend would always wonder, like,
She would regret that.
the shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I remember in talking to some other families through One Bright Star, when they've lost their child, so devastating, a loss for your girls, their dad, so devastating. But the one thing that that empowered them was having someone else lose their child and them being able to go over. There's no words or nothing that can be said, but they know what they're going through. And somehow that helped them with their grief process too. And although your girls, and especially your middle daughter, is feeling like, oh my gosh, Mom, what do I do? Her heart is huge. Those girls got together and took their cousins through this, and hopefully that will help them through their grief process too. Just another step, and not even maybe a step, but just another, it's expanded. And, but they're helping other people. And through their tragedy, they are able to help someone else. And then they hope that, you hope that that just continues. But like you said, so many more kids are losing their dads or parents, dads, moms, in high school. These are things that we need to talk about. We need to do something and address and help these teens with grief. What do you recommend?
Reaching out to other parents, as awkward as that might be.
Okay.
There in my youngest daughter's class, there for sure is, and I've met her a few times. Her husband, same thing, very suddenly, just all of a sudden passed away. So, Grace and I had talked a little bit. Eric and I were talking. One of the assignments in class the other day was to Google yourself. And Grace goes, what do you know? My dad's obituary came up. And she was sitting next to the student who had also lost their dad. And it was one of those things where she goes, I wasn't sure if it was funny or not. And I said, well, you've known them the whole time. You've been to school since you were in kindergarten. And she goes, yeah, they would have totally thought it was funny. And I go, so it's not a funny situation, but it's something to be like, hey, look what we have in common.
Right.
So it's more of a peer-to-peer thing. So, even if it's just parents reaching out to other parents, hey, what did you do?
Right. Right.
How did you handle this? How are you doing this? It feels sometimes, and it was hard. It was hard for my husband and I to watch them because they weren't with us.
Right.
Most of the time, because they had those 2 other families that were taking care of them so wonderfully. So it was hard for us just to make sure that they were okay, but letting them go at the same time, but also the daily text messages.
Right.
Sure.
Letting them know, hey, I'm thinking about you. If you need anything, let me know. I'm going to the grocery store. If you're going to be around, I have your favorite snacks in your room. Or, just little things like that. Hey, I'm still thinking about you. You can, if you need to run away, I won't tell anyone where you are.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that might be something for friends too. Their friends as parents. Hey, if you want to run away, come on over. And
You've
then,
offered that to me before, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
I offer it to a lot of my friends. If you want to run away, I have 2 spare
you
bedrooms
covered.
because the girls are at college. I have spare bedrooms. Come on over. You might end up with a dog in your bed. That's
Oh, well.
But no, that's great. They need that escape. Mm-hmm. And those daily text messages and that stuff, they were very safe, and they were grieving with their family that they needed to be with, but yet you were there and you were just letting them know, I've got you if you need anything. And that's so good for your girls
And
that they were
therapy.
able to have that. Okay. And
so much therapy. So much therapy. Don't be afraid to tell your family practice doctor. All of the girls ended up being on anxiety and depression meds. Mm-hmm. As 95% of America
Yes.
during
Right.
COVID.
Yes, right.
It's not an uncommon thing, and it's not a thing. It's not something to be embarrassed about.
No.
No, it's a coping mechanism to get you through what you're dealing with.
And,
Yeah.
and mental health is
It's
mental
huge.
health is so important.
Yes.
And especially when they're younger and they're growing, and they need to be able to know how to, work through those things.
Well, and studies have shown that going through trauma, whether it's the loss of someone or an accident, chemically changes your brain.
Yes.
So it literally changes how you process things. So it's not that someone says that. No, it's been scientifically proven that this is what happens. So if nerve endings aren't connecting anymore and things aren't the way that they're supposed to be, it's totally fine to work with a therapist if you don't feel comfortable with medication. And there are therapists in Mankato who work with children who specialize in grief. So reaching out to those. I think poor Grace is on therapist number 4.
you have to find your person. You have to find the right fit.
And they kept having babies.
Okay. Just going to say, there's a reason.
And leaving.
These therapists, yes.
So I finally had to call and be an advocate for my child and
Yes.
say, okay, I know this is going to sound crazy, but bear with me. So I need to find a therapist who works with teens in grief and is not going to have a child anytime soon.
Because we need consistency, because that is
then she's
really
just
hard.
having to start all
All
over.
over.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
All
that's as far as you've gone, and then you have to go
All the way back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Poor
But good for
girl.
Grace and you, because she's still doing it.
She is.
She's hanging in there because it's important. And like you said, that trauma, that loss, she's working through it. That's
And there's
what
good
she's
days
gotta
and
do.
bad days. I mean,
Yes.
there are days that she doesn't get out of bed.
Right.
And that's okay too.
And there are days that I check the location on, she's going to go for a drive. She's been gone for a while, and I check the location, and she's at her dad's grave. And that's fine.
Yes.
You need to talk things out.
There isn't a right or wrong way to grieve.
No. And they
Everybody-
have
yeah.
dry erase markers, and they write on the tombstone,
Aw.
and I mean, it's so helpful that they have a place to go to write things or to do things or to say things.
Yes.
Or sometimes they'll stop at McDonald's and have dinner there or lunch there. And that's great. They're working through that.
Yes, they are.
So it may sound super weird to some people, but it's what works, and it's what helps.
Acknowledging it and working through it is so important. And that's
100%.
what we keep talking about. remembering them, saying their name.
Yes, saying
Yes.
their name.
Asking about them
Asking about them. Yes.
every
Yes.
time.
And my friend recently lost her father, and I'm not asking her like, how you doing or anything. I hugs.
Mm-hmm.
Love you. That's all I say, because that's
Just want them to know
Yeah.
that I'm thinking of you, just like you said, those daily text messages. But
Text messages are super great and super easy. Snapchats,
Yes.
a picture. Hey, thought of you today.
Yeah.
right,
You know, I mean, that's all it needs to change someone's day.
right. Right,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And that's a perfect way to get, with the teens. Because my kids have their phones.
24/7.
I mean, I think it's glued
Yes.
to their hand or everywhere. So
you could probably make a TikTok.
Well, I don't really know how to work TikTok.
We should figure it out and just send it to the girls and see what they say.
Let's do it. All right. Until next time, Lynn, thank you so much for being here. I think we could talk about this for hours. So
Hours.
Yes.
we should definitely, we'll get back
I'll
together
haunt
again.
you again. I'll come back.
We'll connect
I know.
again. That would
I
be
can't
great.
wait.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks for listening to One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast. Life After Loss is a copyrighted production of One Bright Star. One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast is sponsored by the law firm of Burkholtz and Associates. For more information on the lifelong journey after losing a loved one, please visit our website at onebrightstar.org.